Welcome to Windy City Fantasy Football.
Week 14. This is it. This is the last week before we find out who the final four teams are going to be for the trophy playoff this season 2019. And sadly for myself, there's only 5 teams left in the running to see who's going to have the 4 spots available. And with that, let's take it away to last week's results.
Last week's winners and losers. The game that's for pride. Austin beat Jameson. The most important one of the week, Emily beat Sam. Woo!
To quote the great American poet Arnold Schwarzenegger, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And the Giants bleed. Granted, it's more of a scraping of the knees on the sidewalk as a 5-year-old falling off of his bike, but it can be beaten. And we're getting to the point in the year where losses mean a whole lot more than wins.
Right.
And that goes along with the next game. I should have held off on that little tirade, but nevertheless.
Yeah. Delaney beat Michaela. Jen took out Cousin Carson. He's my nephew, but Alan calls him Cousin Carson.
He's 10-1 in his other league.
Well,
it might be
Sam.
different.
He's Sam in his other league, essentially. So we're just, making sure we're bringing him back down to earth. Sam's probably crappy in one of his other leagues, too. Lindsay beats Sue. And then the Rick-Matt matchup. How did that go?
I lost. Mm-hmm. I have essentially lost out on any chance of making the playoffs.
Well, there's no essentially. You did.
Okay.
That's it.
You haven't made the playoffs yet either.
I'm aware. I have the scenarios. We'll talk about them in a minute.
Oh.
So, okay. Can you show everybody your shirt?
What's your shirt say? My mom is a genius.
No, wrong.
What?
That's the wrong word.
What is it?
It says my mom is a genius. What's the wrong word?
My mom says it's a genius, so...
My mom says she's a genius. I mean...
Yeah, so that's the wrong
His mother does say that. Whether or not it's true, it's yet to be seen. All right.
Do you have anything else to say, Alan, before you go back up to your bedroom where you belong?
Hey.
I want to take a hat.
Fine. Take a hat and go bye-byes. Anything you want to say to the
camera?
camera?
Wave bye-bye to the camera.
Bye-bye, but this isn't the right hat. This is.
Oh. Yeah, you like the new hat. You don't like Mommy's old hat.
What?
Moving on.
Go up to your room.
It's hot.
It's because Daddy's head is hot. Flo wanted to cool it down.
Okay, Daddy.
Back to bed. Back to bed. Bye.
You can cool it off in your room. Hey.
So, now, getting ready for this week, I couldn't find a notebook that I normally use. I don't really know what happened to it. So I picked up this old notebook, which kind of lays around everywhere. Second page in this notebook says, week 14. This is it, folks. Last year's, this week from last year. It's kind of crazy that the next time I pick up the notebook is week 14 the next year.
It's amazing when you find things around the house.
Yeah. So I kind of went off of last year's format. And the first thing that I had on this was last year we did a big thing where we checked up on our first round picks. And we had not done that yet this year. So I decided to go back and see who all of our first round picks were and what we thought about them now. So here we go. Emily had the first pick. She auto-picked Saquon Barkley. But that I would definitely give a thumbs down. He has not been very good this year. I mean, no one on the Giants have.
He's been okay. I mean, he's probably going to finish the season as a top 5 running back. But, I mean, if he was on a team that was vying for a playoff spot, yeah, we'd probably have a better opinion of him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the player is fine. It's just he's on a team that's not winning a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
So that, much like in the real life, matters.
Yeah.
He's behind me, isn't he?
Are you back in your bedroom yet?
Go to your bedroom now.
Go to bed. Come on now. Go.
You're not getting this hat unless you go to your room. Go to your room.
Matt, you had the second pick. Who was your pick?
Julio Jones.
How'd that go for you?
Again, good player on a bad team. Julio's not had as good a year as he normally does. He's probably in the top 10 receivers this year, but he's been hurt. Matt Ryan has not played well. Their offensive line has been junk. How's the Falcons season going this year?
Super well.
Yeah. So that really has a lot to say with how a lot of players end up performing at the end of the year. I think Matt Ryan, Devontae Freeman, they're all not having good seasons. Hell, they traded away Mohamed Sanu in the middle of the season before the trade deadline. So
He's loving life up there in New England, though. Let's be real.
but that's just it does affect how the NFL team does as to how the fantasy player is going to do, and it's really hard to predict that in August.
Yep. Sam had the third overall pick, and he took Christian McCaffrey. And needless to say, that's a thumbs up pick.
Christian McCaffrey is going to finish the season probably as the number 1 running back in football. He's had a lot of really good games this year.
See, to your point, he's on a terrible team.
Well, there are different aspects of things that work in his favor. Their offensive line has not been totally garbage. The difference in quarterback being from Cam Newton to Kyle Allen is his name. Kyle Allen wants to throw the ball around a little bit more. It opens things up for Christian McCaffrey. You know.
Okay. With the number 4 pick, Lindsay had Alvin Kamara. He's just middle of the road. He hasn't really been as good as he has some years. But it's not like he's been bad either. He's just middle of the road.
The Saints have been a team that they've really have kind of become a total team now. They don't need their offense to score 1.5 million points to stay in games. They're not having 50-point shootouts with the Buccaneers this year to see who's going to win. Their defense has played really, really well this year, and their defense is kind of keeping the team afloat. Hell, they won 3 or 4 games without Drew Brees. Who would have said that a couple of years ago?
They beat Seattle in Seattle without Drew Brees.
Yeah, so it's Kamara has definitely been a part of that, but his numbers are coming down. It's really hard to repeat as a running back. If you have a really great year, it's really hard to have another great year back to back. I think the last fantasy running back to do something of that was LaDainian Tomlinson. And how long has it been since he's played football?
With the number 5 pick, Jameson took Odell Beckham.
There was absolutely no way to predict that OBJ wouldn't probably even be a top 15 wideout this season. There was absolutely no way of predicting that. The Browns have been a total mess from the get-go. Their coach will not keep his job after this season. He will more than likely be fired. That team is a giant mess, and one man wasn't going to save them. And OBJ certainly has not flourished like a lot of people thought he would.
Right.
So,
one of the TV shows we were listening to said that he's only had 2 games with over 100 yards. And that's insane when you think of OBJ. So, there's that.
he had 100-yard games with Eli Manning and a bad offensive line. He goes to a young dynamic quarterback with good running game. Kind of gave up some pieces on their offensive line, but that team has not produced this year.
No. Next was Rick with the 6th pick, and he took Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas is about the most reliable
Thumbs up.
wide receiver in the NFL. He's kind of quiet because he doesn't have the flashy personality like OBJ or Antonio Brown, but the guy just produces. I think he was the #1 wide receiver last year. He had a ridiculous catch ratios last year. I think like 9 out of every 10 passes that were thrown his way, he caught. Something to that effect. If you want to take a sure thing in fantasy football next year, barring injury, Michael Thomas is about as close as you get. So yeah, I can definitely see why he's definitely thumbs up.
Number 7, Michaela took Zeke Elliott.
That was a big...
I'd say he's doing good. So on Thanksgiving Day, we found ourselves watching the Dallas game, and it was kind of funny when we stopped at one point. We were all cheering for Dallas to score, and the 4 adults in the room, which is me and Matt, Michaela, and Rick, we each had a Dallas offensive player in our teams. I had Cooper, he has Gallup, Rick had Cobb, right? And Michaela had Zeke. The Cowboys have talent. Zeke is a talent. They can't seem to put anything together because they are run by a scary old man.
I was kind of wondering where you were going with that for a second because it has very little to do with Zeke. But the team is built around Zeke. Where Zeke goes, this team goes. And I know Dak Prescott's having a really, really good year statistically. He's also in a contract year, so that kind of puts a little bit of emphasis on maybe him wanting to do well. Mm-hmm. Zeke also sat out for the first couple of weeks over contract negotiations, so that kind of has a stinging effect on what you think of his entire season because he's not going to actually play 16 games. But the Cowboys are kind of up in the air because, well, maybe Zeke hasn't had the best season in the world. I still think he's the most talented and most dynamic offensive player they have. But
I don't know.
If we're gonna start saying Dak Prescott is the most dynamic offensive player they've got,
I was gonna make an argument for Cooper. When Amari Cooper doesn't do good, they don't win games.
When Zeke Elliott doesn't do well, they don't win games.
There you go.
And when Dak Prescott does well, they still don't always win games.
There you go. So, anyway. Number 8, Carson took DeAndre Hopkins. Solid.
Arguably the best wide receiver in football talent-wise right now. I mean, Antonio Brown's not in the NFL, so that kind of de facto falls to Hopkins. He's a dangerous weapon, and when he has a reliable target on the other side of him, he's really hard to stop. That part's kind of been a little bit up in the air, especially the early part of the season, because Fuller was kind of working his way back from an injury. Kiki Kuti has kind of been injured off and on throughout the year. So, and they really kind of gave up on their running game. They had to sign Carlos Hyde from waivers. I think he was let go from somebody in the offseason. Now he's their leading rusher. It doesn't hurt that you've got, His name escapes me at the moment. The quarterback.
Deshaun Watson.
Doesn't hurt that you've got him throwing the ball to you. Guy can get kicked in the eye and still throw a touchdown pass. But, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is probably, if Michael Thomas is number one or, one of the most reliable, DeAndre Hopkins is right there with him.
On that same note, with the number 9 pick, Sue took Josh Jacobs. To me, that one was kind of a surprise because I can't really say he was that much on my radar, but he really has done gangbusters for her.
The Raiders themselves have been kind of a very good story this year. I don't think a lot of people expected the Raiders to do well.
Me.
But this is, again, another case in point where a rookie running back does really, really well in the NFL. So, is it surprising? Yeah, it's surprising. But, I mean, Josh Jacobs had the talent to be drafted in the number 1 in the first round of the NFL draft. So, I think it shouldn't be that surprising that he did well. We'll have to see what he does in the next couple of seasons because that's when running backs really start to make their stride.
Like, with the number 10 pick, Austin took Todd Gurley.
Well,
and I love Todd Gurley. I was the one that took him the first year. I loved me some Todd Gurley, but man.
Well, when you play a beginning of your season on teams led by Jeff Fisher and you have absolutely no passing game, if you're a running back, you're going to see some miles put on the tires. And that was what happened to Todd Gurley. Unfortunately, now he's in the NFL equivalent of load management because his knees are kind of getting to the point where he can't reliably play a 16 or 14 game season anymore, which is kind of scary to think about for a guy who's probably not even 30 yet.
I don't think he's 25 yet.
That's worse.
Maybe 26, 25, 26 at the most.
In the offseason when they said arthritic knee, that was a big red flag for Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so hard to be back. It's so hard in the NFL to be good for long stretches of time at running back, especially now that the league's not really a running league anymore. You have to be a multi-purpose weapon as a running back.
Right.
And if you're running up the gut a lot, it's really tough to maintain that kind of numbers that he was putting up. And, the Rams, again, have been kind of a shadow of themselves. It's the Super Bowl slump. They lost, and every team who loses the Super Bowl kind of has a rough year the next year.
Unless you're the Patriots.
Yes, none of the rules make sense when you're talking about New England. But going back to Todd Gurley, Austin was kind of in a bad spot. At that point in the draft, you don't know who's going to be available. Most of the top running backs are gone. Some of the top wide receivers are gone. You're just trying to get a player of value. And unfortunately this year, Todd Gurley didn't live up to it.
But it could be worse. You could be me and take Adam Thielen with the 11th pick because of my technical difficulties. But, he's been hurt most of the season, which, obviously counts against him. So, yeah, he was a bust for me. But luckily I was able to have some other pickups.
The only reason we're talking about Adam Thielen as a bust is because he was taken in the first round. If Adam Thielen had been taken in the second or third round,
where he should have been
taken, he probably would be a pretty good player on a team right now. But yeah, unfortunately, things happen and stuff kind of doesn't play out the way it should. I mean, hell, if we looked at the second round picks from this year, I do believe that Baker Mayfield went in the second round of this year's fantasy draft. Let's see how well that has turned out for the owner of that particular player. I
don't think anyone owns him right now.
This league doesn't really function under the normal logic rules of a lot of things.
Yes.
So it's kind of par for the course.
Mm-hmm. And rounding out, Delaney had the last pick, or the 12th pick, and she took Le'Veon Bell. Solid running back. Hasn't really had a great year, again, because he's on the New York Jets.
Well, the Jets have been a really bad team. I think their season really went off the rails as soon as Sam Darnold got mono and missed about 4 weeks. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah. And then their backup quarterback got hurt, and they were down to it.
They had nothing behind Sam Darnold, which is the story for a lot of NFL teams. They don't have a lot of talent and depth behind their starting quarterback. So you're going to have a lot of teams that, if you're forced to deal with that kind of loss of talent, especially at that kind of position, it's really going to affect all the rest of the players on the team. If they don't know that they're going to have any kind of consistent offensive passing attack, well, what's to stop you from stacking the box and saying, okay, Le'Veon Bell, you beat us.
Right. Run through this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, I just kind of thought that was fun, a little bit of a throwback to last year. Just in case anyone was wondering, last year's first-round picks were Craig took Le'Veon Bell in the first round, and he didn't play. Jameson took David Johnson, didn't have a good year. Michaela took Todd Gurley, who had a good year. Sue had Saquon Barkley, who had a good year. Matt had Zeke, who had a good year. Emily had Antonio Brown in his last good year. Austin, of course, had the Julio Jones. Sam had OBJ. I had Kamara, and Lindsay had Hunt. So,
Road to the playoffs for the Windy City Fantasy Football League. Brought to you by Old Bay, a seasoning that you need to have. First of all, 2 teams are in. The owner of Bad Luck, looks a little goofy, is already in. And the owner of Can You Dig It are in. The easy part is over, and now there are 3 teams. Chicago Mama Bear, Lamar, You Serious, and Luck Be a Brady are the 3 teams that are on the road to the playoffs, and each one of them can make it. Let's start with Luck Be a Brady. If they win, they are in. Next, let's play out what must happen with Chicago Mama Bear to make it in. If they win, they are in. If they lose, they must score big, and Lamar must lose. Finally, Lamar, are you serious? If they win and Mama wins, they must score 27 points more than Mama to get in. Or, if Mama loses, they must win and they're in. Or, if they lose and Mama loses, they must score 27 points more than Mama, and then they'll be in. Brought to you by Old Bay. Okay. So, for the Bears to be in the playoffs, so it's another road to the playoffs. First, the Rams must lose 2 of their 4 games. Either the Seahawks, which they'll lose, at the Cowboys, which they might not lose, at the 49ers, which they will lose, and at the Cardinals, which they'll lose. So, the Rams are going to help us out. Next, the Vikings must lose 1 of the next 3 games against the Lions, which they'll win, against the Chargers, which they might win, and against the Packers, which they'll lose. So they'll help us out. Finally, the Bears must win their next 3 games. First, against the Packers, at the Packers, no problem. Against the Chiefs in Chicago, it'll be cold, and those Chiefs will go to the happy hunting ground. And then finally, they're going to beat the Vikings up in Minnesota inside their dome. That's what it'll take for the Bears to be in the playoffs.
We hope. I had another stat or another segment that I had done last year. Just give it up. Just hold it. That I had done, which was like by stats, the best player at each position. So for quarterback, the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football is Lamar Jackson. Yay me. The number 1 running back, of course, is Christian McCaffrey, and Sam has him. Since our lineups have 2 wide receivers, the top 2, number 1 is Michael Thomas, and Rick has him. But surprisingly, Chris Godwin, number 2 fantasy football receiver, Emily has him. The number 1 tight end is Travis Kelce, and Sam has him. The number 1 defense is the Patriots. Didn't see that one coming at the beginning of the year. Carson has them. And the number 1 kicker is a tie between Will Lutz, and Sam has him, and Harrison Butker, and Sue has him. What's my favorite segment?
Coulda, shoulda, wouldas.
Oh, I didn't do any coulda, shoulda, wouldas this week. Were there any good ones? All right. My favorite segment is Booms Busting Big Outs.
Okay, good for you.
Okay. Booms. Devontae Parker had a heck of a week in the interesting Dolphins win.
That's one dolphin that won't be turned into tuna later.
And, you know, he was riding off of the success of Fitzmagic. Fitzmagic is in the air. He has 1 to 2 good games every year that just make you think that he can play quarterback. And then all the other games remind you, not so fast. Alshon Jeffrey had a welcome back to football game. Also in that game, but he had a good game. James White had an amazing game. It's the Patriots running back, not my running back. Robert Woods had a good game. Darius Geis in Washington is really making a case for himself. Cortland Sutton had a good game. Derrick Henry, Rick has him. And then last but not least, Devontae Adams got 2 of Aaron Rodgers' 4 touchdown passes kind of out of nowhere. So, Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins had 1 good week on my bench, and
Also, we're going bust for like the entire season.
well, no, but he had 0 points for the game yesterday. He did play. He was targeted like 2 or 3 times. Woohoo, 2 or 3. But yeah, not so good. Kyler Murray for Michaela. Not.
He was listed as questionable coming into this week, so it's possible he could have been hurt. But the Cardinals really aren't a good team to begin with. They've got, 3 wins?
I don't know.
I think that's 2 more wins than anybody
And
was
they have
giving
a
them
tie.
credit for.
And they have a tie.
Oh.
Nick Foles has officially been benched for the Minshew Magic for the rest of the season.
It's Nick Foles is really great under an Andy Reid style of offense. You take him out of an Andy Reid style of offense, and he is mediocre.
Yes. I agree. And Tevin Coleman quite possibly has maybe lost his wideout responsibilities in San Francisco. Deebo Samuels had the best week the last couple weeks. And I think he had some kind of off-the-field issue, maybe. Big outs. Greg Olsen got a concussion.
Is this going to affect the outs coming into this week?
So we're filming this super early for us. This is Tuesday. These are injuries that happened on Thursday.
Week.
Last week. So Greg Olsen is in concussion protocol. Maybe will play, probably will not. Kalen Ballage probably tore something in his leg. He's done.
Doubtful.
TJ Hawkinson was placed on IR.
So his season,
season.
Our fantasy season for him is probably done.
Yep. Same with Chester Rogers. I don't know that anyone had picked him up. He was a wide receiver for Indy that was filling in for T.Y. Hilton. He also was placed on IR. And then Trey Quinn for Washington has a concussion. And I forgot to write this one down, but Dalvin Cook sustained some kind of a shoulder injury last night. I don't think, since it's only been like 20 hours, I don't think the Vikings or anybody have come out and said how bad it was, but he did leave the game in the third quarter and didn't return. So
we're getting to the point now where, and this is a good point to bring this up, real NFL teams are starting to get into the point where they either know they have a shot at the playoffs or they know they have no shot at the playoffs. There's only a handful of teams that know, okay, we're in. But this is when NFL teams start making really, really strange decisions with their personnel based on whether or not they think they have a season left or not. Mm-hmm. We've seen this happen before. Especially, it happens more in the Week 17 games when everything's pretty much locked up and the teams at the top...
Right, a lot of people don't even play their starters, or if they do, they play them for, like one snap. Yeah.
So, what I was going to say was a lot of the NFL teams are going to start making interesting decisions. The Carolina Panthers, for example, they don't have a shot at the playoffs anymore. They just fired their head coach.
Our last big out is Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron, our big out.
Yeah. 9 years with the Carolina Panthers, 1 Super Bowl appearance, and he is officially looking for a job. So...
The Falcons could probably use a defensive coordinator. Actually, never mind. We're going to get a new head coach. You can come. You stay in the NFC South.
Okay. Anyway, a team like Carolina is essentially kind of saying, we're giving up on this season. We're not going to worry about it anymore. Well, what does that do for players like Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah.
Are they going to not play him entire games now moving forward because they realize that they're just playing for pride? And what's a pride game going to mean to the future of Christian McCaffrey if he blows out a knee or breaks a leg?
Oh no, Sam. How will that affect you?
It's not just Sam that has to worry about it. Miss Lamar Miller, who when they blow people out, they don't keep the guy in for a full game. Lamar Miller got hurt. But it's going to happen to everybody. A lot of NFL teams are going to start making very strange decisions that aren't going to make a lot of sense. And it's going to affect your and it's going to affect the playoffs.
Yes.
It's going to be fun to see who gets affected.
It really could be any of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, bringing us to the playoff picture. Matt's going to be flashing a piece of paper on your screen right about now with the playoff picture breakdown. So where we're at right now, Sam and Delaney are locked in at 1 and 2. Matt, Emily, Michaela, Sue, Austin, Jameson, and Carson are officially out. This week is all about Lindsay, Jen, and Rick. Lindsay and Jen are tied at 8 and 5. Lindsay has 1,487 points, and I have 1,462. So Lindsay's beating me by 25 points. And Rick is at 7 and 6, but he has more than 200 more points than me and Lindsay. So this week, Lindsay and Rick are playing each other. So you're both not going to win. So essentially, of course, it goes, if Lindsay wins, she's in. If Rick wins, he's in. And if Jen wins, she's in. But if Rick wins and Jen wins, Rick and Jen are good. And Lindsay's out. If Rick wins and Jen loses, it's going to be a higher point total of Lindsay and Jen. We'll all be tied. If Jen wins and Lindsay wins, Rick is out. So essentially, it's gonna mainly come down to
Basically, if you win and Rick wins, it comes down to a tiebreaker for the final spot between you and Lindsay based on points.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is who's gonna win between Rick and Lindsay. I kind of can control. I need Emily to not have a week like she had last week against Sam. So I want to tell Lindsay to tell Emily to not be so serious this week. But then she probably wants Emily to beat me so that even if she loses,
no,
she still has more points and makes the playoffs.
No.
But if there's any chance, people, come on now. Jen hasn't made the playoffs since like the first year we did this. Anyway, so it's going to be a really big week for the three of us. Everybody else is kind of playing spoiler or just kind of prepping yourselves for the playoffs. So, excuse me. So yeah, Rick, Jen, and Lindsay, big week for us. This is it. This is gonna determine who gets in, who's out, who's on the outside looking in.
Look at this chipper face right here. In 1 week, it could turn to complete and utter dismay. There might actually not be a host next week. It might just be me again, depending on how this all plays out.
I will be super sad. But yeah, there's that. Yeah. Go Lindsay! Go Lindsay and Jen! If you go back and listen to Lindsay's interview, like way back when, I said, playoff matchup right here with me and her, that you'd be Lindsay.
Championship game preview right here.
So I need both of us to get in. Yeah. He loves me. Okay, so Thursday's games, or this week's games. Thursday's game.
Bears play the Cowboys. Chicago Bears have a very tough remaining 4 games of their schedule. Cowboys, Green Bay, Chiefs, Vikings. No, I've got that backwards. Cowboys, Chiefs, Green Bay, Vikings. So, not an easy road. But if they can manage to pull out more wins than losses, they still have a shot at the playoffs this year. So, it's not over yet, Bears fans. Don't give up hope. Trubisky can still lead us to the promised land.
The Sunday noon games are Carolina and Atlanta, who are playing for no reason at all. Baltimore at Buffalo. Cincinnati at Cleveland, another pride game. Washington at Green Bay.
The pride of Ohio.
Yes. Detroit at Minnesota. The Niners at the Saints. That could be a good game.
Ohio would be more proud if they were able to quell the opioid epidemic than if they were able to have a winning football team.
That's a bit unnecessary. Yeah. Miami at the Jets. Who wants it less?
Or who wants it more?
Indianapolis at Tampa. And Denver at Houston. The Sunday midday games are the Chargers at Jacksonville. Tennessee at Oakland. Kansas City at New England. Could be good. And Pittsburgh at Arizona. Sunday night football, Seahawks and Rams. And Monday night is the New York Football Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're going to start seeing a lot of NFL games you don't really care about anymore because
sucks.
There's teams that they just know they're not going to make the playoffs.
I mean, Carolina and Atlanta. Like, who wants to have another win?
Really? That's the first game you go to? I'm looking at Miami, New York Jets, and thinking, so they're going to put that on TV.
No, only if you're in Miami or New York. I'm sure the game...
They're going to put that on in New York and Miami. I'm sure there are people in Miami that would maybe rather watch hurricane footage.
Yes, the football team Hurricanes. Miami.
No, they suck too.
They are not the Hurricanes of the 80s, that is for sure. Last but not least, our last week matchups.
These are the games that everybody should care about because this is going to decide the final playoff spots.
Although Carson and Michaela is a game for pride. Go team.
Look, I didn't say everybody was making the playoffs. Only 4 teams are making the playoffs.
Jameson and Matt are playing to decide who is the better Bears fan. Sue and Sam. Sue is attempting to play spoiler and bring Sam down another notch.
Yes, is he going to lose more than 1 game in a row? Oh my.
Delaney and Austin. Again, Austin could win. Austin,
Again, Austin could win.
Okay, so again,
and it would
though,
mean very little.
looking back on this, though, again, last year, Austin, you must have been doing terrible last year, too. So on week 14 last year, my notes say, the real story is about the 2 losses. Jen can't even win in a tiebreaker, so that would be when me and Emily tied, and she won because of the, I forget, bench score or something. It was ridiculous. And then it says, Austin scored 40 points. Not one player. That was his total score. Not one player had over 10 points. His best player had 7.6 points. Ouch.
Aren't you glad she found this notebook?
He's thrilled. Lindsay and Rick are playing, as we mentioned. That's the big game. Jen and Emily are playing. Jen needs to win. Emily wants to play spoiler. So it's been a good season for some, and for the rest, there's always next year.
Well, speaking of next year, we've got some interviews that we've got to get through, but we're going to get to those at some point. We apologize for not getting them done sooner.
We were tried to record Carson's not once, not twice, but 3 times and had technical difficulties. So his insight will be coming to you at a later date.
Yep, and we still have to talk to Delaney and Sam, too. So hopefully we get a chance to get everybody interviewed before the end of the season. We're going to have a new way of doing this next year. So, but thank you. It's been a really great season.
You mean someone else is going to do it next year, right? Okay. I know. Everyone just looks so forward to hearing from us every week.
No, they don't. No, they don't. We don't offer anything useful. This is just a hilarious way of spending 30 minutes on your couch. We're glad that you spend it with us, though.
Thank you for putting up with our ramblings. We know you're really here for Alan and the cats. So, yeah. And in parting, here's a picture of our Christmas tree. Because, Merry Christmas!
It's December 3rd.
Happy holidays. Bye, everybody.
Your football team sucks!
Yes, it does. It's all right. We were in the Super Bowl.